We'd like to welcome everyone out to the webinar today. We're excited to have you here with us. We're going to give the stragglers a few extra minutes to join, and we'll plan to start in about 3 minutes. However, while we wait, you can enter into our sweepstakes for a chance to win some closed swag. Simply go to closed.com/webinar survey, take the brief survey about your current win-loss efforts, and you'll be entered into a sweepstakes to win. We'll randomly plan to pick 5 winners. So go ahead and do that, and we'll wait for a couple more minutes here. Great, so thanks to everyone that entered the sweepstakes. We'll keep that survey open throughout the webinar for those of you who haven't had a chance to take it yet. So take that and you'll be entered in to win some closed swag. But now let's get started with the webinar. To start, we have a few housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded and we'll plan to email the recording of it to you all afterward. Second, due to time constraints, we won't unfortunately have time for live Q&A. However, if you do have questions for the guests, please submit them through the chat box and we'll plan to respond via email later on. Well, let's get started. We're excited to talk about win-loss analysis and specifically how win-loss interviews can be of value to product marketers. So we invited 3 product marketers and practitioners to speak with you today. I'd like to introduce myself and our guests. So my name is Braden Anderson. Currently, I oversee operations and marketing at Closed. Closed is a provider of win-loss services and technology. Our first guest is Ryan Smith, who is the Director of Product Marketing at Armor Cloud Security based in Dallas, Texas. We're also joined by Rachel Barker, a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Qualtrics based in Provo, Utah. And our third guest is Sanjay Piri, the VP of Product Marketing at Avalar based in Seattle, Washington. We're excited to have them here to share their insights on the benefits and best practices of win-loss analysis. To begin, I'd like to briefly just set the stage and explain a little bit more about what win-loss analysis is and how we define it here at Closed. Simply put, win-loss analysis is the process of systematically tracking and analyzing the reasons of why you win and lose sales opportunities. Rigorous win-loss analysis helps companies validate their strengths and identify areas where they can improve in order to increase their win rates. For B2B organizations that sell sophisticated solutions, a win-loss interview with the buyer is one of the most effective methods for learning why a deal was won or lost. Firms like Closed specialize in these kinds of interviews. In most cases, these conversations with buyers last 20 to 30 minutes and drill into many areas, including the product or solution offering, the sales experience, pricing and packaging, the competitive landscape, etc. Closed then delivers these insights back to our clients via innovative software, making it easy for users to consume and share the findings across the organization. The insights from these interviews enable organizations to fill critical product gaps, refine their pricing strategies, optimize sales messaging, track competitive and market trends, fix sales execution problems, and more. In fact, according to one Gartner study, rigorous win-loss analysis can help organizations to improve their win rates by as much as 50%. Closed was founded in 2017 to bring a new perspective and new technology to the win-loss space, and we've been fortunate to design and deliver win-loss programs for the three companies that are represented by our guests here today, Armor, Qualtrics, and Avalara. So without further ado, we'll jump into some questions with our guests about the benefits of win-loss interviews for product marketers in particular, as well as hear their tips and suggestions for those who are looking to implement win-loss analysis for the first time. Our first guest is Rachel Barker. Rachel is currently a senior product marketing manager at Qualtrics, who's actually just acquired by SAP. So congrats to you and the team on that pretty big acquisition. Rachel focuses on go-to-market strategy, messaging, and positioning for Qualtrics as an employee experience platform. We're excited to hear from you today, so thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, if I remember correctly, Rachel, your win-loss program is actually run through the sales team, but is widely used throughout the organization, and specifically for the product marketing team. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. We use our win-loss insights and spread them out as far as anyone actually would like to see them. So we allow quite a few users and try to get those, almost to any team: sales enablement, product management, product marketing, definitely our sales ops and our sales leadership teams as well.
Cool, that's awesome. And then, so specifically on product marketing, so how do you use the win-loss insights in your role?
Yeah, that's a good question. So product marketers really sit at this crossroads of a lot of different teams. We're responsible at Qualtrics for getting those insights to other leaders. So how do we look at those insights and determine, is our go-to-market strategy buttoned up? Are we doing what we need to be doing to win in the market? And I've mentioned this to others before, but at Qualtrics, we don't like to lose. And when we do, we want to know why. And when we win, we want to know why even more. And you combine that with this intense drive to make sure that the customer is getting what they need and want. Win-loss insights become really invaluable to us. And we look at those win-loss insights to really understand what strategic decisions we need to make, right? Sometimes it's a small pivot of, look, maybe our sales pitch on this new product isn't going as well as we thought, and let's go in and figure out why. Or strategically, we're really seeing a gap with this type of deal of this size in this certain industry, and let's go figure out what we need to do to adjust there. So there's all kinds of decisions that win-loss insights can influence, and it's something we tap into quite a bit. For me, on the product marketing side, outside of just some of those strategic decisions we make cross-functionally with leadership, I'm looking closely at those insights to determine what sort of messaging and content we need to support our deals. So, oftentimes we'll hear little snippets from the customer of the customer service was really great, or we were really excited about the tech of the services. We were unclear about X, Y, or Z. And to me, that tells me that I have a sales rep or, some Qualtrics representative who's working with this prospect that was not able to clearly communicate. And that's something a product marketer in our organization takes pretty seriously, to go back and say, okay, where was that broken and how do we ensure we're delivering that better, whether that's training or documentation of messaging, or potentially even the core of the messaging. Is this the right thing we should be saying? And is it helping us compete and be clear in the market?
Yeah, that's great. So really from a sales side, it sounds like it's helping you nail the messaging, both on, outsourcing and with the sales team, but then things that you can do better, but also it tells you your value props, it sounds like, right? Like you use the customer service example, and you're doing better than any of your competitors, that gives you a value prop against any of those different competitors. Is that right?
Yeah, it can validate or it can kind of negate the value of something we think is maybe working and might need some tweaking. So, it's oftentimes we won't get specific calls about competitors in these win-loss insights, but other times we will, right? So-and-so or competitor number one had a much stronger value prop than your team, and we really felt compelled by this element of their offering. And that's not always the be-all, end-all with one data point, but those can be valuable data points and powerful data points if you see them cropped up, repeatedly, and oftentimes are really great to take back to the team, whether it's just the product marketing team to go make changes or, a larger leadership team, which our product marketers sit in, to help influence better overall decisions across the different, functions of our employee experience program.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like you guys definitely see the value of doing win-loss, and you've been doing it for a couple of years now. Why did you guys decide to go out and use a third party rather than have someone internally try to do these interviews or run the program itself?
That's a great question. So I was not the original buyer, as you mentioned. This actually runs through our sales team. So I probably can't comment on the original decision, but I can tell you why I love it and why I think it's really valuable. So first, I think about bandwidth. As a product marketer at Qualtrics, we are growing so quickly that it is really, you're always having to prioritize. This is probably most people in high growth stage as well. I know that at the end of the day, when I have 4 things on my plate and I only have room for 2, competitive intel and those types of interviews tend to fall by the wayside. And so this ensures that we get those interviews done and that they also serve as, a single source of truth. So having a third party do that just kind of keeps them regular and keeps them top of mind for our organization in a way that tends to not happen as much as we want it to. In an ideal state, it would happen, or in a large company that maybe doesn't deal with high growth, they might be able to ensure that these are a regular thing. But the third party keeps us doing that. Close helps us get that done. And then the other element of this is the product marketer. I really value that relationship I have with my customers, and I try to make sure I'm contacting them for the right reasons at the right times. We have so many people at Qualtrics that could be contacting our customers. Our customer success reps are reaching out to them, and our sales reps reach out to them. I reach out to them. And so how do you make sure you're not over contacting those individuals and asking them for a lot, and ensuring that when you do ask them for things, you're providing, more value to them than you're taking from them. So I like to think of Close as a way to help us manage those customer relationships so that we're not, going out and asking them all the time to be answering questions. Instead, they sort of have a little bit more, I think transactional is the wrong word, but another party or another person that's getting these insights to them. And if they have any, big issues or they want to really talk highly of the company, it's not as sometimes awkward to do so directly to Close as it might be to me, who's also the one talking to them about webinars or coming to our big conference or asking them about product functionality. So it's nice to have a little bit of a buffer there to work with a third party.
Yeah, it seems like we're constantly asking our customers to do stuff, right? I'm always asking for references or asking them for a case study, and it's just one more touch point that now it's on another party rather than on you, to keep that relationship solid between you and your customer. Having that third party seems like it definitely breaks down that barrier a little bit easier for you.
Yes, definitely.
Cool, that's great insight. Maybe just another question is, what's a benefit from these win-loss insights that you get, maybe from a competitive intelligence standpoint?
Yeah. So I think competitive intelligence is not something product marketing necessarily owns an organization, regardless of whether your organization tells you as a product marketer, you're in charge of this. There are other people that are going to be a great channel for that and that are going to need that in their jobs. I look at customer success, sales reps for sure. And we, even being not the largest organization, I look at just SAP versus us and the different functions they might have for competitive intelligence that Qualtrics has and has had in the past. And it's really important that competitive intelligence gets all those different places. But oftentimes we'll see, someone over in sales enablement or customer success going and getting their own competitive intelligence and not having that centralized can create some difficulties. And so what I like about Close, what I like about, these win-loss interviews from a competitive standpoint is that you kind of do have that single source of truth. You have an interview that has documented, it's recorded, it's accessible to these different parties throughout the organization, and can serve to either stitch together competitive intelligence that I might be getting on my own from product marketing, that our sales leadership is getting, our sales reps are getting, and we can tie it back to specific deals that have quantifiable opportunities attached to them. And that's, I think, a really valuable thing when you're looking at different data points and trying to get the right insights to take impactful action off of. We're always really focused on not just making big decisions off of one single data point and ensuring that we get all the different angles on something before we move forward on something big. It's important to do, and that's helpful when you look at the competitive intelligence coming from different spots and ensuring that it's kind of all streamlined in one place. And I think that the third-party stuff does that.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. It's a really good insight. Well, Rachel, this has been awesome. Really appreciate you taking the time. Maybe if you had one or any suggestions for other product marketing managers that are in similar shoes as you, especially around win-loss, any additional insight you would give there, or any suggestions you would have for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, it really just comes down to make sure you're always listening to your customers. Just because you had one phone call 3 months ago with a customer and making their anecdote be representative of what you're actually doing in the market, I think would be a big miss. And so that continual stream of listening to what's going on and understanding what's happening in the market is going to position you to play better for a longer period of time. If you're not doing that, it's really easy to get caught up or surprised by something, a competitor coming out with a new offering that you just weren't aware of because you weren't listening. And I think that, to listen, to get really good at listening as a product marketer, and that'll help you stay ahead and be innovative and think creatively to address the customer needs.
Awesome. That's great. We really appreciate your time today, and hope you have a good one.
Yep. Thanks.
Great. So our next speaker is Sanjay Piri. So Sanjay is currently the VP of Product Marketing at Avalara. As a senior technology product strategist and leader, Sanjay has worked with brilliant entrepreneurs, colleagues, and executive teams over the years to successfully commercialize a wide range of breakthrough technology offerings, spanning roles with innovative startups and mid-sized growth companies, as well as top global enterprises and B2B organizations. So Sanjay, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Braden.
So I guess I think a question that a lot of people think about as they're doing win-loss is just maybe tell us a little about the story and why you at Avalara decided to do and implement win-loss.
Well, Braden, the straightforward answer to this question is we wanted to get systematic feedback about our sales execution, our marketing efforts, product capabilities, and then competitive intelligence. So that definitely is the first objective. However, the more nuanced response to this question is we wanted to get feedback directly from customers and prospects. We didn't want to talk to our internal folks from different parts of the organization and then try to reconcile opinions of what people heard during a deal. I wanted to hear the feedback directly from customers and prospects. And this is a great way of doing that. And the third very important reason, and in my mind, what has worked really well is embarking on a structured win-loss process, especially with close, allows us to build a framework and structure to share this information regularly. Because if you have to scale to be able to share this information broadly through the organization, so the company can learn, employees can learn, and they can modify behaviors and take actions based on these insights and learnings, you have to figure out ways to scale, and you cannot do one-offs in order to achieve those goals.
That's good. That's great. And then maybe tell me a little bit more about kind of your win-loss strategy and how that's evolved over time.
Yeah, so when we started off, I had a hypothesis in my head, which was we wanted to start off with about 70% losses, 30% wins, because in my mind, you learn more from losses. as we went through, about a couple or 3 months of win-loss interviews, what we discovered is that our hit rate on the losses was turning out to be low. We were not getting as many customers who were agreeing to talk to us to losses. And while we were still interviewing a lot of losses, we said, let's switch the ratio. The other reason we decided to switch the ratio to about 50-50 was we were already getting some good feedback and actually consistent feedback from both the wins as well as the losses. So switching to a 50-50 win-loss ratio seemed to be fine. Eventually, sometime about the fourth quarter of last year, of 2018, we pivoted our approach one more time, where we said that we wanted to focus a lot more on competitive wins and losses, because we discovered that the competitive landscape was changing pretty drastically. Things were heating up, especially after our company IPO'd. And it made a whole lot of sense for us to really make this pivot into competitive wins and losses. So all in all, I think our approach has continued to change, and I fully expect it to change, because neither our business nor the market nor anything else that goes on around us stays constant. So we sure that you're constantly modifying your strategy based on realities around you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really smart and wise approach as you're doing win-loss. So you've been doing a program for about 1.5 years now with Closed, and so it's changed already a couple of times, and I think that's wise, right? Like, you want to get good feedback and a lot of feedback about a specific segment, then adjust. Your organization is changing, your competitive landscape is changing. Let's go and dive deeper in this other segment and learn as much as we can there. So I think that's a great approach that anyone that's doing win-loss should really consider as they're doing their interviews.
Yep.
So like I said, you've been doing your program for about 1.5 years. Maybe dive a little bit deeper into kind of the nature of the feedback that you've received.
We have focused on, I would say, about 4 different areas. The first one being pricing. And the objective of focusing on pricing is not really to get to specific price points, because you're not going to get to that. A lot of interviewees are going to be hesitant to talk about specific pricing. But we are able to get some level of comparative analysis of how prospects view our pricing, how they perceive our pricing, and if there is something that we should be thinking about in terms of addressing that. The second area that we have focused on is understanding sales team effectiveness, and that's a piece of feedback that we hear a lot. We hear many times that our prospects have really appreciated the way a particular salesperson has conducted the deal. They've run the sales process, and we communicate that to our sales leaders. We also hear that a particular prospect was not too pleased with the way the deal was conducted. That feedback is passed along too. But really, that particular component of feedback has allowed us to really get our sales teams to become a lot smarter about how they're selling, and our sales leaders to have direct feedback from customers on, or rather prospects, on how their sales reps are performing. The third area is competitive, and I think that kind of sort of gets to a lot of the areas we've talked about: pricing, sales team effectiveness, marketing, potentially product feedback. So that kind of is all encompassing, but it more of a competitive rather than talking individually about each one of those areas. And one area, and the fourth area that I should probably have mentioned previously was product feedback. And one takeaway from my experience on product feedback is that you will get great product feedback depending on how deep your due diligence process typically is in your sales cycle. For example, if you actually run a proof of concept, you're probably likely to get a lot deeper, better feedback about product capabilities, as opposed to if it's a relatively smaller, shorter due diligence cycle. So those are the four areas that I would say we've received. I wouldn't go into the specifics around those, but those are the areas that we've kind of addressed.
Yeah, and it sounds like, so obviously a lot of that affects you directly as a product marketing leader, but how is it working with the other teams when you get feedback for them?
You know, I've been really fortunate. The sales team I work with, I think of them as true partners, and they've been tremendously open and in fact welcoming of the feedback that they receive, because we at Avalara, especially our sales leaders, are committed to making sure that we are improving our sales reps' professional skills. Of course, we want to improve their throughput, their productivity, but we want to make sure that they are improving as professionals. And this goes a long way in supporting those goals. So the leaders know that this feedback is truly intended to improve our sales effectiveness. The reps know that this feedback is being used to improve their skills. So I think it's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that, because it's funny, a lot of people are a little nervous when they get product or sales feedback to share that with the other teams, especially when it's negative. But we get a lot of feedback that, the teams love it. They want to know how they can improve the product. They want to know how they can improve the sales cycle and things like that. And so I think that's kind of a common thing for us to not be worried about, is working with teams when we have negative feedback, and especially as we're working alongside with them, that they're going to be very open and receptive to that feedback. Because at the end of the day, it's a third party collecting it. It's not you as Sanjay, the product marketer. It's a third party, and you're kind of the middleman relaying that information back to them, it seems like.
Yeah, and Braden, I think there are a few layers to that. I think it's extremely important that third parties collect it, but it is also important that the feedback comes from customers. It's not somebody's opinion. It's not somebody who has some type of an axe to grind, or who's trying to negatively impact another team or what have you. It's about this neutral feedback that is being collected from a customer through a third party, and then being passed along through marketing, which really, from a sales perspective, is supporting the sales organization. So I think those things are extremely important in making these effective. Now, what also really, really helps is the structure that you at Closed help put around that data. Because without having those that portal and making it available to for many folks within the organization to be able to see openly, looking at the transcripts and seeing some level of quarterly reports, without having those, it would make it a lot less effective. Having all of those tools available is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and just for the audience, so at Closed, we obviously offer technology for our win-loss programs that really make it easy to share the insights that we're finding, all the way from the individual transcript to emerging themes. So that's what Sanjay is referencing there. Really disseminating that information widely throughout the org is a lot simpler in that realm. I guess maybe as we're kind of coming up here to a close, Sanjay, is how has Avalara benefited from the action and from the feedback?
Well, I won't go into specifics about the benefits here because of just confidentiality consideration. But as I mentioned before, we have been looking at feedback around pricing, around sales team effectiveness, around product, and then also competitive. And I feel like we've definitely benefited in all of those areas.
Awesome. Maybe the last question I'd have for you is just, what tips or best practices would you share with other product marketers, obviously around win-loss?
Absolutely. So I have three tips for product marketers. First one is start the damn program. Doesn't matter how big you make it. Start with few interviews, 2, 5, 10, 20 per month, whatever number makes sense. at a regular cadence that is right for your business and budget. Start the program. And then number two is continue to monitor it closely. It's not a fire and forget. Look at the results and then start to hone in on what exactly you want to achieve out of the program. Sometimes you go into it with a hypothesis. At other times, you may decide that you just want to start a program because it makes sense. Because there are no one-size-fits-all solutions for something like this. You will have to match the win-loss, and you have an opportunity to match the win-loss in your program with whatever your strategic drivers are, and then fine-tune it until you are getting what you need out of the program. And then the third one, and I think this is really important for product marketers, there is no better way for product marketers to gain credibility within an organization or to gather support for your initiatives than bringing the voice of the customer into the equation. And in my mind, you can have an argument with somebody and cite a customer testimonial, and all arguments come to an end because that's the end of opinions. Right? Opinions, while they are very interesting, are not very valuable. Direct customer feedback is. And this helps. I really believe that bringing direct customer feedback, whether it's through win-loss analysis or other mechanisms for product marketers, is one of the best ways to make yourself credible and effective.
Yeah, I love that last, especially. So I was actually a product marketing manager myself in a past life, and had very similar experience. You can't argue the voice of the customer. Everyone can bring their opinions, but when you actually bring data from your actual prospects and buyers and customers, you just can't dispute it. So I love that last point, Sanjay. That's awesome.
Great.
Cool. Well, this has been awesome, Sanjay. I really appreciate your feedback. I hope everyone got out of this as much as I did from learning from you, Sanjay. So again, thank you for your time and appreciate all your insights.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome. So our next speaker is Ryan Smith from Armor. So Ryan, with 10 years of experience, serves as the Director of Product Marketing at Armor Cloud Security. Ryan actually speaks regularly nationwide at conferences, user groups, and special events on the topics of cloud security, compliance, PCI, HIPAA, and GDPR, and developing secure cloud architectures. A lot of stuff that's really over my head, so we're glad that Ryan does his job well. Ryan also holds a PhD in mass media and communication studies from European Graduate School. So Ryan, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Really excited to share a little bit of what we do here at Armor, how win-loss fits into that, and some of the great work we've been able to accomplish with Closed.
Yeah, we're excited to hear about it. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So one of the first questions I have is, why did Armor decide to do win-loss interviews? What was the main driver or even the business case?
Certainly. I think there's two answers to that question. First is we were in the middle of transitioning our product structure from a legacy product that had grown and driven a lot of the revenue for the company in the first 5 years of the company to a new product line that better fit in with some of the market trends that we were seeing. And so we were going to market with the new product and had to find product market fit. So external win-loss was a great time for us to test messaging or product gaps or how we were packaging that new product to really get some early, quick, iterative feedback on what we were building, whether it was working, how it was sold or positioned within the market, and what that was doing for us. So that was the first reason. And the second reason was that we primarily did have a win-loss program, and we were doing it internally before, so with our own sellers. And month to month, we would get with them and review the deals they had from that month and try and get a little more color from them around some of those same questions. Well, what we were finding was that the internal win-loss program, while it was getting us some traction with that, wasn't quite uncovering all the insights we needed to. And that wasn't a fault of our sellers. It was a couple of things. One, whenever you're doing it internally with your own sales organization, there's always a little bit of seller's bias. And the companies themselves will always look at you as, okay, you're just trying to look for last minute avenues to try and salvage this deal. Whereas an external company coming in and doing it really is trying to position that, look, we realize that we've lost your business. This is just to help gain insights for down the road, and brings a little more objectivity to the entire equation. And so it was a desire to take some of the great initial work we had done with our own internal program, but provide some formalization, some structure, some objectivity that really resonated in our prospects' minds too, of them being able to share a little more once it was transitioned to an external company.
Yeah, that's really good. Was it a hard sell internally to move from an internal program to an external program? And like, who did you need to get buy-in from?
So it's really great that within Armor's marketing program that we have a great close relationship with the sales team. So we do an account-based marketing strategy, which means our lead structure is not based on whether it was marketing content that brought in a lead or whether it was a seller doing their outbounding or inbounding, but really it's about the joint efforts of the marketing and sales motions and how they qualify accounts up together within that funnel. And really we have a common goal with the sales team of revenue. So whether the company makes revenue or not reflects both on marketing and sales. So we already have a little bit of that collaboration and structure in place, but we have to work in position with the sellers that this wasn't something that was meant to come in and critique them or make them act as a performance indicator on their annual reviews or something. So first it was kind of right setting with the sales team that this feedback would only be used for positive improvements within the company and not as something to be held over their heads. But beyond that, and working with the sales team to get that buy-in, we definitely wanted to make sure that product and operations and support and our executive team were all read into it as well, because it's a little bit of a misnomer to think that you're only going to get feedback into the sales motion and you're working a win-loss program, because that's really what it's targeted towards, is that selling process. You're also going to get a lot of great feedback on your product gaps, how you support the solution, what onboarding was like, etc. And so it was making sure that the entire company had a little bit of buy-in into some of the benefits and outcomes that we would be able to achieve if we implemented a program like this. And then once we explained that value proposition, explained the methodology that Close would be using, it was pretty easy to get buy-in from the entire team.
That's great. One thing I want to dive into a little bit more is around the working with the sales team. So it sounds like you guys got a great relationship with them, but sometimes there is negative feedback that does get back to the sales team. How do you make it feel like it's not, you're just, like you said, critiquing the sales team, but it's more of just, this is going to help us all, and you don't want them to feel shamed, right? Like, how do you guys handle that at Armor?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. First, it's a realization that a lot of times within the win-loss interview, really personal information about a seller generally isn't the type of information that surfaces. I'm assuming if you had one seller who just never gave collateral over, didn't hit deadlines, was rude on the phone, some of that might come across on an individual level. But really a lot of the feedback that you get regarding sales is about messaging or the sales motion itself and communication cadences or how pricing was positioned, etc. So it's more at the process level anyways. So that generalized feedback is something that you can start with, right? Is just sharing the actual type of feedback that you're going to get. Secondly, it's important to recognize and make sales feel that you're in this together. This is less as much of a critique on every other part of the company and the process. And it's just an iterative feedback cycle. So when sellers see that, hey, things about the product are being stated as well, not just the sales motion, or they had some problems with our messaging or packaging, then one, they feel like that feedback is distributed. Two, it's important to show quick wins, right? So take that feedback and make improvements to help them. So we've actually done a great job getting seller buy-in to this by some of the times where the win-loss has exposed critical things of product marketing collateral, making changes to that collateral almost immediately, putting that back at the sales and showing how you can take some of this feedback and iterate and improve your own process, and that makes them feel better as well. So I think if you kind of focus on what the actual feedback is that you'll get from it, sellers feel pretty comfortable that it's not just going to be a bunch of personal attacks. And then really it's about making them feel as this, that you're in the same bucket with them. I think if you do those two things, then getting sales buy-in to something like external win-loss is pretty easy.
Yeah, and that's something that we try to preach even here at Closed as a best practice. When you're starting a win-loss program, regardless of how you're doing it, is to get the sales and the product and the executive team, get their buy-in as you're building your program initially, right? So as you're building the interview guide of the questions that you want to ask on these interviews, go and ask the sales and make sure they have their input and their buy-in so that when they get the feedback, they'll know that it's stuff that they wanted asked, right? So I think that's great insight, Ryan. Appreciate you diving into that a little bit more. Maybe just one other question is just generally, what feedback have you been getting at Armor as these interviews have been conducted for you?
I think it's all feedback that gears towards finding product market fit. So product market fit is something that's the holy grail of any product or marketing team. And it's making sure that you're delivering the right features, the right solution to a particular target segment's problems. And so whether that is what product we're building and what features it has, how that product is packaged, how it's priced in relation to other competitors, what competitive insights that the market is giving us as to what other companies do better, what they do worse, how their pricing models compare, etc. All of this stuff is feedback that we've gotten through the interviews. And it's really helped us make quicker decisions as to what's next on the product roadmap, how we should message, what competitive battle cards we should build next. So I think that's how that feedback gets translated within Armor, at least, is not just waiting until the end of a quarter or the end of a month to make adjustments based on prospect deals, but rather everything that's happening with our sales cycle, every deal, whether it's a win or a loss, becomes an iterative feedback loop for us that is making really real changes in our day-to-day operations, whether that's the product marketing collateral we're producing, like I said, what features we're putting on the roadmap, what pricing work we need to do to make the new offering competitive and transition people from our old offering to our new offering. So that's the biggest thing is I think it gives you a lot of insights into a lot of different areas, not just the sales process. But what that allows you to do is take that feedback and operationalize it in a way that allows for iterative changes within your selling motions that actually have pretty big impacts.
That's awesome. That's great. That's really insightful feedback for the org, it sounds like. Well, cool. Well, this has been really good, Ryan. I think maybe the last question I have for you is just around, what advice would you give to other product marketing managers that are in a similar role to yourself?
Yeah, certainly. So first of all, definitely do external win-loss interviews. I think we've shown in some of the other discussion that we've had today is just some of the overall benefits it can provide to a company and how it can create changes within a company's operations that truly allow you to iterate and move quickly in the market. outside of that, I would say there's a couple of best practices, and I think that these best practices are also why my second piece of advice to product marketing managers would be to choose closed. And we'll get into that here in a little bit, but I think that you need to have equal numbers of win-loss interviews. It's just as important why you lose as to why you win. You want to make sure that those are also distributed across either use cases or roles within a company or decision makers, so you can get better data on how different industries, personas, etc. are interacting with your product. You want to make it non-salesy. So I think this is an advantage of having it being an external vendor as opposed to internal, is you avoid conflicts of interest, right? When it's an external company doing it as opposed to you doing it.
Yeah. And
then you want to make sure that you can take the content, the results of those interviews, and actually do something with them. So the way we do that is we have regular meetings with the sales leaders on a weekly basis, where any new interview we get in from close, we go through the top 5 insights and then any action items with a timeline for adjusting something based on those insights. So weekly, we're having touch points as to how to make the findings actionable out of win-loss. And then the last piece of advice I have is understand that your customer's perception is reality. And so whether you like what's coming out of win-loss, you absolutely disagree with what's coming out of win-loss, oftentimes what the customer is telling you is the market perception of your company and your product. So don't get caught up in an ego trip, but really understand why a customer might be saying those things, the value they provide. And for all of those reasons, and those best practices, it's why we chose close, because y'all have an incredibly consistent methodology. You're able to probe and prod in all the right directions, get insights, and take very quiet people that don't want to give up information and are holding it close to the chest and get them to spill all the beans in the world. All able to do that with a great price, right? And with great client relations. So I would say those are my best practices and why I think somebody like Close can deliver on those best practices.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great insights, especially for anyone that's just starting to get into thinking about doing win-loss, or if you've been doing it for a while. I think Ryan just shed some great light on some of the things to take into account as you're doing your win-loss program. So Ryan, really appreciate the time today. We'll let you run, but thanks again for the time and for the insights.
No, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me, Braden. And once again, really appreciate our partnership with Close and everything you've been able to provide us. Hopefully we've shown product marketers and companies just worldwide why doing something like win-loss is valuable.
Perfect. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Braden.